recipes in it.
Get on the train before it leaves the station. Wisconsin versus Avery, a complete fabrication. Get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down. And we all know Stephen and Brendan were blamed, but it does not take a brain surgeon to see that they were framed. And yes, we know what this was about. The civil suit, the settlement that did not want to pay out, want to pay out.
And the depositions they wanted to avoid.
And you may hear this song, oh maybe you don't get it. I suggest you look up TikTok, Manitowoc on Reddit. There you will find trial transcripts, evidence files and reports, and you will start to fathom the corruption within the court. And as you shake your head because everything seems demented, you will find yourself in company of 3 on-bank judges that dissented. But don't you worry, you're not going insane. You just happen to sit down on Selna's true train. Get on the train before it leaves the station. Final destination, inevitable exoneration. Get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down. Get on the train.
All right. Hello, everybody. How you doing out there? We're here tonight, obviously, as the title says, to talk a little bit about the blood vial from 1985 and something of a discrepancy between the results from that blood sample and the sample that was taken in 2005 or 2006, actually. Sorry. And there's some little differences that have been noticed. And so there is now a kind of conversation talking about it and coming up with the reasons whys, what fors, and, you know, what it really looks like. You know, is it really what it looks like? You know, so being thoroughly vetted, I guess, is the word I'm getting at. So this is the first live since Mammothon. And you guys may remember the guest here tonight, Rayxor, who was also part of Mammothon over on Allie's channel. And so, you know, this is the first time I've been live. Allie was the first one to go live today. Unfortunately, I didn't get to be first. I was about to be, but I didn't know she was going to go at 1 o'clock. So anyway, no, I'm just kidding, folks. So Allie was the one that went first today. But so this is my first one since Mammothon. I'm happy to have Rayxor on. Was going to be having Scooby, folks. Just want you all to know, Scooby's got some things going on. She had to deal with something tonight. She just couldn't do it tonight, even though we had planned to do it. She's going to be on tomorrow night, so we're going to get to hear Scooby's take on this tomorrow night. But tonight we're here with Rayxor, who has some limited experience in this type of stuff. Is that fair to say, Rayxor?
Yeah, that's fair to say. I've done some molecular biology throughout my career, but that's not what I would say is my bread and butter.
Right. Okay. So just to offer that out there, folks. So anyways, so we're here with Rayxor to kind of go over these things that were kind of noticed and that we're all talking about. And then we're going to, you know, chat about some of the interesting things about this particular testing. And we're going to be wrapping it up with something that I think y'all might find very, very interesting that Rayxor found that I think, well, it's pretty darn interesting, I gotta say. So you guys can look forward to that, but it's coming towards the end, so you gotta stick around. Anyways, okay, so what the hell are we talking about, right? Okay, so we have documents put together now where the 1985 results. Remember when they tested Penny Brunson's fingernail scrapings, right? And they came up with some alleles. They weren't full profiles, but they came up with some alleles on certain loci, however you want to say it. And so it was three in this particular example we're going to show you today. Three different locations where basically where they got results, and we're going to see that the results for Stephen in that in that test, which came from his blood, right? Blood in a vial, right? Plenty of white blood cells there, as Scooby would tell us, that's where you actually get the DNA from, is the white blood cells more than the red, right? So you would have plenty of blood cells there to get a full DNA profile. It's hard for me to believe that somehow, for some reason, their testing wouldn't have been picking up all of the alleles that were present, with a very good sample, plenty of blood to test. It's not like it was a partial sample of a swab out in the wilderness that, the morning dew had diluted or something like that, right? It was blood. I mean, am I correct in that assumption, Rayxor, you think? Or does that sound reasonable to you?
Can you repeat that last bit? Sorry, I
Oh,
was slightly distracted.
Just that the blood would give a very, very distinct, profile. It wouldn't likely, even that, I would think even at that time in infancy, if they had plenty of blood to test, right, to get the profile, it should have shown if any alleles present, right? It wouldn't have, it's not like it was a weak sample, right? With a strong
Yeah,
sample like that, you would probably get all of it, right?
they had a blood sample from him, so it's not like some other swabbing of a
Right.
touch transfer DNA or anything like that. It's the quantity of DNA is not going to be an issue here at all.
Right. And so they should get a very, very, very distinct profile,
Yep.
I would think, having
Yeah.
as much as they need. You know what I mean? Right.
Yep.
So it's one of the things that we're going to hear talk about is the possibility that that test didn't pick up one of Stephen's alleles. I'm just forecasting this now, folks, because I disagree with it. But we're gonna be going over a Redditor's comment that's going to suggest it, and I just right now, just on the surface, I just think it's not correct or incorrect. So I just wanted to preface it. Anyways, so what we're talking about, and I'm going to show you guys here a side-by-side comparison of the profiles. The one from basically what is 96, I believe, when they were testing the fingernail scrapings. And we're going to see the test results on three loci, however you want to say it, loci. And we're going to see the results for Stephen. We're going to see Penny's blacked out. And then we're going to see two different profiles from the two different fingernail scrapings that they tested. So the important part is to look at the alleles they get for Stephen. And then we're going to look at the 2006, profile of Stephen Avery, and we're gonna see if they match up, basically, right? So that's what we're gonna do. Let me show you guys real quick what we're talking about, just so you can visually put this together for yourselves. For those of you who haven't looked into it already on your own. Okay, so this is kind of what we're talking about, folks. So the thing to pay attention to here is this is the fingernail scrapings. This is Stephen Avery's DNA profile on these three loci, right? These are three different, readings on different locations of the DNA strand, essentially. Okay, so they come up with a 9 and an 11 under TPOX. They come up with a THO1 on. They come up with a 10 for Stephen, and on CSF, it's longer than that. 1 PO. They come up with a 7. Okay, so this would be a full profile taken from a blood sample. So it should be. I mean, it's hard for me to believe it would be missing out on in in detecting alleles that were present. Not because just basically on the fact that it wasn't a weak sample. So it's hard for me to believe alleles are missing there. But moving on. So if we go from TH01, we got a 10 showing up right here for Stephen, right? Go down to TH01 for Stephen somehow in 2006 is coming up with a 9 and a 3 there on that location of the DNA strand, right? So that's odd. And it makes you wonder about, what's going on here. Are they the same blood? Are they the same sample? Or are they from the same person? If there can be a difference like that. Well, let's look at another one. TPOX here is 9 and 11. And, that one actually does match up down there. It's 9 and 11. Okay, fine. No big deal, right? Then we go CSF, where Steven shows a 7. You go down here, and CSF shows a 12. So that's 2 out of 3 that are not jiving, not, that don't work. Different discrepancies, essentially. Any thoughts on what we're just saying so far, Razor?
The one comment that I could make is I think some people have suggested that the 9.3, if that's a difference in how they're reporting them, I suppose back then a 9.3 could have been rounded up to a 10. I don't know if that's the case at all, but if
Scooby had suggested that possibly.
Oh, okay. So she's in agreement. Okay, so that one you possibly have an explanation just because the numbers are close.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, the 7 and 12, those ones, they shouldn't.
That's a very
that same explanation just doesn't work for that one at all.
And trying to say that, maybe the 96 test didn't pick up the 12, the allele 12. That's why I'm trying to say I don't think that's plausible, folks, because the 1996 sample was taken from Stephen Avery's blood with plenty, of DNA there. They shouldn't have been missing alleles. That seems silly to me.
Yeah, and if it's missing an allele, it wouldn't just have a different one in place of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
can I address one thing that
Scooby and I have done before, talking about this, where she was doing a little bit of explanation where we showed like profiles next to each other, and she's explained, how they kind of differ. So those of you who have seen that before, there's sometimes only one allele, sometimes there's more.
Yeah.
So, or sometimes there's 2. So it's like, it's not always the same, and there's not always, it's like I said, there's not always 2, but sometimes sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. So it's basically the
because you have everything on your chromosomes you have in pairs, so you either got 2 of that allele or you have 1 of each.
Same allele, right?
Yeah, like the TPOX will have 1 allele's got the 9, 1 allele's got the 11, or one of the chromosomes, and on the other ones they would both have, say on the CSF, they both have the 12 on, right. And that's why you have some with 12, or some with 1 and some with 2. It's just how the pairing of your chromosomes.
Right. Absolutely.
Can I address one thing?
So if you have 2 chromosomes there at each location and they're both the same, you obviously have only 1, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Yep. Makes perfect sense. So,
okay. Can I address one thing before we go on?
Go ahead.
Maybe you're going to cover this, but I've heard some people and read some people have been trying to say that, well, maybe his profile changed over time. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, right.
If your profile can change over 10 years, then forensic science, as we see being used here, would be completely useless.
Yeah. That's well.
So anyone proposing that is obviously just trying to throw something out there, and hopefully they can pull some.
Right. Throwing spaghetti against the wall, they call it.
Yep.
Hoping it'll stick. So, so what this all comes down to is it's creating the question of are we talking about the same, basically was the donor for each blood sample the same? And was there some other monkeying around with Stephen Avery's blood that was in an open box out in the clerk's office, where it was in a kind of a somewhat of a traffic area where a lot of people went through? And so was there some monkey business going on? Because why would there be these discrepancies? And can, I guess is what I'm trying to say, can the fact that these tests were in their infancy and were somewhat imperfect, can that explain some of what we're seeing here? And whether or not, so that's what we're going to be kind of discussing tonight. Now, Rayxor and I are just kind of riffing at this right now. Rayxor clearly has a little bit of a background in this, but we're basically, just talking about this stuff, saying what occurs to us on its face. And obviously, we'll have Scooby on tomorrow, who will obviously be giving her informed opinion as well. And I think maybe through all this, we're going to come to a consensus with a bunch of informed people thinking about it, considering it, and really seeing what's there and what's not. So I think that's the important thing, obviously, because it would be easy to try to run with this and just go, oh yeah, it's definitely, some kind of shenanigans, but it's better to prove it first, before you go singing it and shouting it from the treetops. So anyway, let's see. What is the accuracy of the test? Well, back in 1996, DNA testing was in its infancy. And so just to give you guys an idea of what Scooby is going to be kind of hitting on, that back then DNA was in its infancy. So it was just catching on. There were several different companies that were making these kits to test DNA and whatnot. And all the kits were actually just kind of subtly different. And she made the analogy of it's like buying different cake mixes from different cake manufacturers. They're all just going to be a little slightly different because they have a little slightly different things about them that, so what she's saying is back then some of the tests were better at like testing certain alleles, and sometimes they were kind of spotty at testing certain other alleles on certain locations of the of the DNA strand. So she was just alluding to the fact that the testing back then didn't have a uniform standard yet, and all these companies were basically competing for this DNA technology to be the one producing the kits that they use to do the DNA testing. So that's one of the things that people are saying it could have been due to imperfect tests, and that could explain the discrepancies. I think Rayxor disagrees with that, right? No,
not well. There's the things I disagree with are more substantial than that. I don't think the differences that some people have made between them, where they would say, well, the 7 in this kit might be the 12 in the other one, or something like that on that CSF.
Right. That's
loci. That I would disagree with.
It seems far-fetched.
And it just, that kind of explaining just looks like you're just trying to justify your previously held opinion about this, and you're just making up anything without any real evidence to support that that's even the case. You're just saying maybe it's this, so therefore we can still say that it's his blood or something like that.
Right.
It's kind of grasping, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think the difference between that 7 and the 12 though is pretty huge. So it's going to be interesting to hear everybody weighing in on this as we go ahead here. But to, I guess, get to what some of the things that are being suggested, we have, Redditor Yakuza who says they're a molecular microbiologist PhD, while they haven't directly worked with the combined DNA index system, the CODIS, in forensics. He works with multi Matolicus sequence
Multi-locus?
typing. Matolicus sequence typing.
Multi-locus?
Multi-locus, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Multi-locus. Okay, got it. In bacteria, typically involving evolution of pathogens and tracking the epidemic and antibiotic resistance. To have quite a bit in common, but I am by no means an expert in forensics. So he's disclaimer aside, he's saying that the divergent DNA results in the Avery 1996 and 2005 blood samples, nearly all the animals are diploid, which means they have 2 copies of every chromosome, which is something we were explaining just a minute ago, right? There's 2 alleles at each chromosome. There's typically some variation in the DNA sequence of genes occupying a locus. Every such variation is called an allele. CODIS scheme used in forensics is based on the amplification of the 13 core genes in the human genome and assigns an allelic type represented by the number to them based on the variation number of the short tandem repeats, which are as Scooby's explained before, they have 4 different enzymes, or not enzymes, but 4 different building blocks.
Base pairs.
There you go. And whatever those are, those will be repeated over and over and over. And so then that sequence gets assigned a number, and that's what we see on the pages when we see allele 5 or allele whatever. It's representing a repeated sequence on the DNA strand. So using the strDNA sequence, it's important to realize that the genes are not sequenced. They are typed based on length using gel electrophoresis.
Yep.
Separated by size, if you will. Basically separating the strands by size, right? There you go. In any case, Avery's CODIS results, the gene typing of human thyroid peroxidase, TPOX, is consistent between the 2 time points. Allelic variant 9 on one chromosome and variant 11 on the other. When it comes to the CFM's proto-oncogene for CSF1 receptor marker, it looks like the allelic profile is dissimilar. However, it is possible that Avery's allelic type for CSF1PO is 7 and 12, and that only the 1 gene from the chromosome was amplified during the 1996 testing. Allele 7.
I don't buy that.
Right, and that's the one I'm saying I have a bone to pick with, folks, because it just seems
because
not right on its face.
Yeah, because what that would mean then is 95, only the 1 allele got amplified, and then 10 years later, only the other one got amplified.
Right.
It wouldn't work like that.
Got better 10 years later, and they still didn't get both. Right. That is funny, though. So, let's see here. 7 in the case, the gene was from another chromosome. Okay. Next is the gene encoding tyrosine hydroxylase, which is clearly dissimilar between the 2 results. There could be quite a couple of reasons why these results are conflicting, but suffice to say, it challenges the validity of the specific lab's results, of even the quality of the lab and the law enforcement itself. So that's another thing Scooby wanted me to point out, folks, was the 1996 testing happened at LabCorp. And LabCorp I'm pretty sure LabCorp has really, really, really strict kind of, or at least they're really, really diligent about their protocol and note taking and those sort of things. They probably don't. They probably don't teach a class while they're testing an important sample. Things like that. You know what I mean? Something tells me that doesn't happen at LabCorp. That's where the 1996 sample was tested. But by 2006, Wisconsin Crime Lab had finally pulled itself, into the present era and was able to do that. And so we had Sherry Culhane doing her job over there. She has like I believe she had the highest rate of mistakes or
Contamination.
contaminations or whatever wrong.
There was something like that.
Wrong. She had like the highest rate of everybody, but she was the fastest. It's like, oh, great.
There's a correlation there, I think.
Oh, that's good. That's lovely. I have so much faith in her. Anyway.
Is that a segue to the other part that we were talking about?
You mean your little bit? No, I think we'll say that for the end.
Okay.
So, anyways, that's basically kind of what's getting discussed is that, there's obviously the suggestion there that they just didn't pick up the allele, the allele 12 in 1996. And then, like Rayxor was saying, and then suddenly in 2006, they pick up the 12 and not the 7, right? And it's like, so it just doesn't seem, it just seems odd. And it seems hard to explain. Now, we are obviously going through the explanations and talking about them and exploring their validity, but still, the difference between the 7 and the 12 and the fact that I'm supposed to believe that there's 2 alleles there and not even the 2006 test picked up both, I don't know. It just seems less than probable to me, I guess.
If you want to apply Occam's razor to this, no relation.
Right.
Where you choose the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions. Well, the simplest explanation for this is the blood they tested was not Stephen Avery's.
Right. And therefore, whose was it?
That doesn't, and that's an entirely different question. But I think it's not. I think that's a good starting point to say this doesn't look like Stephen Avery's blood. Right. And then start from there.
Right.
Then figure out why it wasn't his.
So to answer Russell Gatton, we are saying in layman's terms, we are not sure yet. We are looking into this. We have noticed some interesting things. We are, and Scooby's going to be on tomorrow, and you're going to get to hear Scooby's take on it too. So just be patient, buddy. Right? But look at it on the surface. It's interesting. And it's, for me, it's, trying to explain the 7, the difference between the 7 and the 12. Maybe you can get away with some mumbo jumbo on the other two, but the difference between the 7 and the 12 to me is huge. And it's like I said, to suggest that neither one of these tests would have picked up, if there was 2 alleles there, neither one of these tests picked up both. That's just silly to me and improbable. So we're obviously going to hear Scooby's take on it tomorrow. There's a lot more coming on this, but basically it looks like who the heck's blood was this? Because they only tested those 3 loci, folks. Those 3, because the fingernails only yielded alleles, I believe. Most likely it only yielded, measurable alleles on those loci. So that's why we only see 3, I think. And so they were only testing Stephen's blood. That's the other thing about the 96 test. They're only testing Stephen's blood for 3 specific loci to see, right? Because they only got
by current standards, matching 3 isn't even considered an actual match.
Right.
By today's standards, I think. Right. I'm not sure what the standard is right now, but it's
the FBI
a heck of a lot more than that.
It used to be 14 back in 2016, but I heard since then it's gone up now to I don't know, 19 or 21.
Yeah, something like that. I do remember seeing that it had changed recently as well.
Right. So I mean, that's yeah. So the fact that there's 3 there, 2 of them don't match. Don't match 2006, and one of them does, but 2 of them don't out of 3. Right, and so that's enough. Okay, well, what if we explain the other one away? Okay, fine. Maybe it was some kind of weird thing with the 9 back in 1996. They didn't register the 9.3. They just registered that as a 9. Okay, I'll go ahead and say there's maybe some probability in that. Okay, fine, granted. So we still have the 7 and the 12. And if like I said, our issues with that already, with trying to suggest that one of the tests wouldn't have picked up both if they were there is ludicrous. So that's what we're at. We're the implication is was Stephen Avery's blood in that vial, or whose blood was in that vial if it wasn't Stephen's? So that's the implications here, and that's why we're talking about it.
Can we briefly discuss where the vial came from too? Because there has been talk, and I can bring it up. I can't cover everything, but there was some discussion about his blood coming from Kettle Moraine.
From which prison it came, right?
Yeah, and someone was pointing out that at the time that his blood would have been taken, he wasn't at that prison. I don't know too much about it, but of course, it sounded bizarre, and I can't comment too much. Maybe people in the comment section can post more information about that, because people know more about it than me.
Right. So, yeah, a question, but I don't see a question. Anyway, so that's where we're at. Obviously, there's it's either this wasn't Stephen's blood, and it and it could have been potentially a mistake by one of the prisons or whatever, or something silly. But the question is was that Stephen's blood in that vial, even, or was there some kind of monkey business happening? I don't know what it really means for the Teresa Halbach case personally, and I don't know how you feel about this, Rayxor, but me personally, I don't know really what it means for the Teresa Halbach case, other than if there was some monkeying around with that blood and it's not Stevens, it just shows more like they're just like bunglers. Like they just bungle everything they touch. Or there's a reason why all this is happening.
Hey, these guys got awards.
It still kills me that Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert were given awards publicly, and like it was all, I just, that is just for what that's what you get for abusing a kid in America, folks.
You gotta wonder if they were sweating, because they probably thought they were getting reprimanded.
They should have thought that, because okay. I remember when they were actually, after Making a Murderer 1 came out, it was probably about maybe 6 to 8 months after, and they were about to go on a little speaking tour.
Oh, yes.
Fassbender and Wiegert were going to go around and talk about, try to explain their side or whatever, right? Well, they scheduled an event, and it just turned out that there was a lot of people that went on Facebook and like, talked about the both of them and everything. Ended up the shows weren't selling any tickets. Same thing happened when Kratz tried to do it. He was going to go around with Judge Janine Pirro. Yeah. Oh my God, that was great. And nobody wanted the tickets. The venues ended up backing out because there wasn't enough ticket sales and stuff. So, so, but I do remember that, and I remember thinking, these two clowns got an award for what they. Oh God, it's just like unbelievable.
Yeah. Can I answer the question you asked about what does the those 95 or 96 blood tests have to do with the Halbach murder investigation?
Sure, if you want to.
they, of course, it has nothing directly to do with it, but let's suppose that someone sent in someone else's blood instead of Stevens, hoping that
Prison. Right.
that it, hopefully it'll match with what's on the fingernail scrapings, and we can keep them in there. If there's that level of corruption going on,
Right.
it's quite possible that the civil trial that was going on and the depositions, they might have eventually dug this up and looked into it, and that might have directly affected what was going to happen with that trial. So you could speculate that maybe that was motivation for the frame up, because they had a lot to hide. It wasn't just, yeah, we don't like this guy and we'd like to get him back in prison. Maybe it was like, people are going to find out about this, and me and this guy and that guy, we're going to be in some deep shit.
Mm-hmm.
It might have led to his current conviction.
Right.
Just a speculation.
Right. Okay. So there's a comment here from Tony. Okay, so first one is Erekose, you cannot equate. These are not questions. Unless Okay, so I don't know. Let's see what you think about this. This person is telling me, Tony Fertini, Erekose, you cannot equate the 1996 and the 2005 results together unless you know that the exact PCR primers were used to amplify the CSF. Does that sound correct to you?
I just want to read it again here.
Sure. It's Pom Pom There's two of them you'll see, but scroll up. There's another one from Pom Pom where she says, Tony Fertini said. So my take on this right now, just as a layman, at that statement, what that tells me is that then I cannot trust any DNA results that are in CODIS that are from 1996. That's kind of what that's telling me, because you're basically saying that they were inferior, they didn't do a good job, and that means that there could be improper profiles in CODIS, in my opinion.
So long story short, we better gather up all those exonerated people and put them back into prison, because we can't trust any of those results.
Right. I'm not saying we can't trust any of those results. I'm saying there's now, with this kind of thing happening, with those, I'm just saying with the early ones, the ones that were, as is being pointed out, were somewhat, they had different PCR primers and blah, 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 right? Bunch of stuff I don't really understand just yet. But
different primers should not change the 7 tandem repeat into a 12 tandem repeat.
Okay.
I mean, it's the number of tandem repeats are going to be there no matter what. If a difference in primer is going to make that much of a difference, then the whole science should be in question. And that's why I was making that joke about the about people that have been exonerated. If this was that much of an issue, it would have come up already, because there's been how many people exonerated by DNA since the 90s, like in that period when, if we're going to say things were still up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
If that was a real question, some of those guys would still be, still possibly be in prison, because people would be contesting it.
Right.
Has anyone ever appealed any of these cases where a man has been exonerated by DNA testing?
Right.
And
basically, how much proof is there of this type of thing happening?
Yeah, I can't think of anyone who was released and then they said, "Oh, yeah, we were looking at the results, and yeah, because there was difference in this kit and that kit." it's actually the same person, but it just looked like it was different. So we're going to send him back into prison. I don't think that's happened yet. And I don't expect it's going to start anytime soon.
Right. So this person also said the same kit was used for everyone in 2005, 2006. So by then there was a uniform standard, which is what I already stated earlier.
Yeah.
Stephen Avery is homozygous.
Homozygous 12, I think you said.
Okay, yeah. For a CSF same allele 12. What does that exactly mean?
That just means that homozygous means that he's got the same one on both chromosomes. Homo means the same. Okay. Hetero means they're different.
Right.
So the one loci that had I think it was a 9 and an 11. That's heterozygous. It means
right.
They're different on each chromosome.
So if he's homozygous on 12, then yeah, it would make the 1985 blood highly questionable, or at least questionable.
Yeah, because
we shouldn't be getting a different allele there.
Yeah, the interpretation of those results for 95 would be that for CSF he's homozygous 7, and in 2005 he's homozygous 12, which are very different. There's not like, well, you can mix the two up. You certainly wouldn't mix those two up.
Right. Yeah, it seems silly to even suggest. So, but yes, I see what Tony Fertini is trying to say. Yes, it is. It makes the 1985 blood sample seem extremely suspect and odd.
Yeah, and can I just mention one more thing too? There's not a single kit that they use. There's a few kits, and if you look at the there's a FBI website for CODIS. They actually show which kits are the ones that are part of the standard, what type of sequence reading machines are part of the standard. So they'll have a list of them. So you're not
approved.
Every lab isn't going to use the exact same thing. There's going to be some differences, but each one has been individually validated to show that it's going to be consistent with the others.
Uniform standard. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So 7 Pairs of Panties says, when Rayxor went to hunt for all sources of DNA, cause of the planting defense, he did not document finding any blood vial. 7 months later, Buting finds a vial from Fox Lake. Where did the kettle go?
Yeah, that was the whole thing I was talking about. It seemed to have come from one place, and it's kind of like the whole shell game going on again. It's like,
right,
where did it go?
Misdirection, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's up his sleeve. Okay, damn, got me again.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, primers and kits from '96. Okay. Hello, Ravender Ray. What's up, buddy? 3 alleles, not a full profile. As I explained, Tony Fertini, I was saying that that's most likely the alleles. Those are most likely the loci that they found alleles for, and it was only 3 because it was just fingernail scrapings. It was limited amount, right? Basically, so
it might be that that lab was just testing for 3
results on those loci for those alleles to be there on those loci. You can't debate that, and the fact that one's different is damn odd. Why would it be? And so that's it.
Can I offer a guess here?
Sorry?
I can offer a guess of why they only use 3. If they were, because I believe the defense they requested this testing. And if they're just looking to be excluded, looking for a mismatch between the nail scrapings and Stephen Avery's blood, you don't need a full profile of 13. You just need a mismatch of 1 to say it wasn't him.
Right. And that's what was happening, is there was an allele popping up that didn't belong to Penny or Stephen. Right?
Yeah.
There was an allele that neither of them had. And so that was, and then So the state just says, "Oh, well, then she probably just got it from the people on the beach that gave her a towel, or her husband." Was she digging her claws into those people? I don't think so.
Well, here's a guess. Maybe the person who gave them the towel was sweating profusely.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah,
all
you
know.
always
According to
gotta.
King Kratz, sweat.
Yeah,
You know, shoot, there it goes.
yeah,
Damn it, it all falls apart.
yeah. You got buckets full of this DNA, and it lasts forever.
You just got to imagine officers carrying around little vials of Stephen Avery's sweat. Ooh, I just got to imagine him carrying around little swabs from his inside of his cheek. That's how you get 19 times more DNA than you should find on the hood latch. Anyways. No, they just tested 3. The judge didn't trust the results. So the
Yeah,
defense
because
chose to only
they got
test those
such
3
poor profiles from the
sorry.
nail scrapings that they couldn't say, well, we can't exclude them.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't, at the time they weren't realizing that it wasn't his blood or whatever the case was. They were just
Right.
comparing it to the scrapings and not much showed up for the scrapings on those on 2 of the 3, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah, there was. I noticed that as well. Yeah. Okay, so I have to go to work tomorrow, so I think it's maybe time we start to wind up. You obviously have something a little bit special here to show everybody. I think it's pretty damn interesting.
Okay.
I'll let you introduce it and all that. Go ahead.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is with the bullet fragment. I believe it was item FL. That
Yeah.
was the one that everyone's heard about that they found. Well, I think there was an FL that was found early, but then there was this FL that was found later. It's the whole shell game with their numbering system.
Right.
So the one that was found after the so-called confession from Brendan,
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that was tested, and it got the negative control that was run with it was contaminated with Sherry Culhane's profile.
Mm-hmm.
And she decided, well, I don't have any more sample. I used it all up. I can't rerun it. So I'm going to deviate from protocol and not call it inconclusive because of the contamination. I'm going to go and report it anyway.
Right.
And so that's the part that we know. The part that we don't always know, and I'll switch to the screen share there. Okay, so we can see this here, and we can see my mouse.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have here, where my mouse is the the contamination log, and this was entered into evidence during Stephen Avery's trial. The date here we have is 4/24/06. That's April 24th, 2006. So, a few weeks after Brendan's confession, so-called.
Right. 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks after.
Right? Yeah. So then we have the next thing is her initials. And then the next column over, from that, we have, it says, analyst profile found in MC12. The MC stands for manipulation control. Right. And I guess that's another way of saying they're negative control.
Right.
Then we have the next column over, M05-2467. That's the case number for the murder investigation, and it says that last column is other comments that they made, what they did to deal with the situation. So she's claimed that she cleaned the area, which is part of their protocol, and then it says no sample to re-extract. And then under that reported profile.
Right.
So we know this is the one that she was talking about.
Right. This is the event that matches the testing of that bullet. That description matches what happened with item FL, right?
Yeah.
But look at the date, folks. 4/24.
Okay.
Right?
Now the magic is going to start here in a second. So when this contamination happens, because Sherry wanted to report this anyway, she had to fill out a deviation request form that went to her superiors. It was supposed to go to 2 of her superiors. Only one of them actually signed off on it. And so the deviation request form is something that would happen after the contamination event. However, if we look at the deviation request form, Sherry Culhane, we'll look at that date, 4/10/06. That's 2 weeks before the contamination happened.
Right.
She actually, according to this, she requested the deviation 2 weeks before she had the contamination, which necessitated the deviation.
You're asking for the deviation 2 weeks early.
The analogy I use is this is like going and paying off your speeding ticket 2 weeks before you got caught in the speed trap.
Right.
It doesn't make sense at all.
Right.
Now, some people might say, well, that's just a typo. We see those every now and then in this case, don't we?
Yeah, we hear that word thrown around a lot to explain.
And just to show you that this is the same one here, if you look at this line where my mouse is, they're talking about the same thing, the bullet fragments.
Yes.
FL.
K and FL, right.
Yep. And
MC12.
the same thing, MC12.
And look at that number, case number up there, folks. M052467.
So we know this is the exact situation that they're referring to on the other page. Now, of course, typos happen, but how often do they happen when the person signing off on it 3 days later also makes a righto? Is that what you call it? A typo that's handwritten?
Yeah.
I don't know. There may not be a word for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she signed off on it.
A typo, you got to say the other's a typo. So it starts to get pretty damn ridiculous when you get to that point. So
yeah. So according to her, well, according to the person who signed off on it, they signed off on it on April 13th, 2006, which is still, 2 weeks less 3 days before the actual contamination event happened.
Right.
Now, I don't know about you, but I find this a bit odd.
I totally find this very odd. I mean, yeah. I mean, that event clearly is logged as in 4/24, and then here's this thing being asked for on 2 weeks previous, 2 weeks, 3 days previous. Yeah. It's definitely very odd. I mean,
and if you want to check these yourself, both of these documents are on StephenAveryCase.org.
Yep, you guys can find these documents over.
They're in the website. They're under the trial exhibit numbers or the. Okay, I'm trying to get back to.
I want you to post these
your preface
documents in Discord as well, so that we can pin them.
Yeah, I can do that.
What would be the best room for it? There should be a room for the bullet. There should be a bullet room. So let's put it there, and then we'll pin it there, because I think those two documents together are highly interesting.
Is there a room just for typos?
Dude, if we go with everything the guilters say are typos, everything would be in that room. I mean, you wouldn't have any other rooms. Anyways,
you'd only need the one room. I mean, that's efficiency. Okay, so that was my little story that I found very recently, and I actually have to thank a guilter because he kept arguing with me to read these things, and that's when I found this. And I'm like, oh,
right.
Thank you. So, a little shout out to Solo and the Wookiee.
Solo and the Wookiee. I like it. It's a good name, even if I don't agree with him.
You know what? Peter Mayhew died today. He's the guy that played Chewbacca.
Oh wow, no, oh man,
Yeah, the big guy's gone.
that's a bummer. Love
Yeah.
Chewie.
Yeah.
I actually love the new Solo movie too, man. That thing's pretty
I
good.
haven't seen that one yet.
You haven't? Oh, dude, it's on Netflix, dude. Check it out. It's good. I enjoy it. I've watched it a couple times. It explains the whole bit about the Kessel Run and him and Lando, and oh man, it's cool. It's really
Yeah.
cool, and it's well done. It's a lot of adventure. It keeps you, kind of on the edge of your seat a bit. It's kind of cool. So.
Yeah, I'm imagining it's must-see TV for anyone who just enjoys being in the Star Wars universe. And
Yeah, I'm a bit
the
of
more they know, the better. It's another thing that another few Lego sets that they can buy and stuff like that.
Hey, dude, are you making fun of me?
What?
Because I got my little nano blocks here from when I went to Australia. See that? Oh, I got you locked in right now. No, I do actually. I'm into sci-fi. I dig it. I totally.
Well,
dig it. And then I got my little nano block koala that I got while I was in Australia.
Oh, nice.
I'm just messing with you, brother. No, but no, it is good though. I mean, I swear, my brother's not into sci-fi either, but he liked it too. He thought it was fun because he likes the Star Wars movies, and he just, yeah. Another one that was good too was what's it called? Rogue One.
Rogue One, yeah, that one was fantastic.
Fantastic, right? Oh my god, that one was really good. Especially the end with Vader. That was crazy.
That was awesome how they drew it in, and I think that that episode was a very good prequel that fits right into the to episode 4.
Yeah.
It wasn't cheesy or anything. Well, it didn't have so much cheese as the other trilogy that we won't talk too much about.
The latest one, yeah, it's kind of.
But I gotta tell you, I started getting choked up when I was realizing none of these people are gonna live.
Right.
Like, this is the only movie I'm gonna see them in. Like, I better deal with that right now. I don't have 2 more movies to grow with them. This is it.
Right. Yeah.
You don't.
I thought it was cool just watching the Rebel fleet like come in, and it reminded me, at the battle at the end of it with the space battle and stuff, reminded me a bit of Battlestar Galactica, which I always liked, the new one.
Yeah.
I just liked it, the way the ships all flew in, and then there was the big old fight where I just dug it. I just thought that movie was so well done. It was just very well done. I think
it was.
So anyway, we've obviously gotten off topic, and we're talking about Star Wars now. So, but that doesn't take away from how very cool the information that Rayxor brought to us tonight was. That is absolutely phenomenal to see a request for a deviation that wouldn't be needed until 2 weeks and 3 days later. That's awesome. So thank you very much for bringing that. Everybody's like still going like, what the hell? So.
Yeah, so that someone messaged me and said, "Hey, Scooby can't go on tonight. Why don't you go on and you can talk a bit about the DNA?" And I was like, "Yeah, I suppose I could." And I thought, wait, that thing that I can bust that open now. I just sort of, I did a lot of looking and I couldn't figure out any reason why this should have taken place with the dates that it did. And it's like, yeah, it looks pretty solid. It's, I guess I'm ready to.
Awesome. Hey, I'm glad you chose to unveil it here. I'll tell you what, it's an awesome find. It's awesome. That's truly awesome. So like I said, we're gonna get that pinned somewhere in Discord where where it's easy to find, because
I dropped one of them and I'll just drop the other document right now.
In fact, I may even pull the end of this. I may screen capture it and upload it as a video just by itself for people to see.
Okay, that might be helpful because the contamination log is, I think it's 23 pages, so it's kind of hard to find. I'll add a little note so that people know where to look for it too.
Okay, cool. All right, so folks, let's see what we got going on in the chat here before we go. Let's see, paper trail room. Right, maybe let's see prices. The banners. So amazing works with Sherry Culhane, predicting she would need a deviation days before she did the test. Weeks before, J-Jax, weeks. Helmet hair sloughed off, some polish and shine. Oh, God. Yeah, possibly. All that Aquanet. Anyway. Shane Bear. Share Bear. Anyways. All right, so it's getting late. I know I got to get my butt to work in the morning. But wow, what an interesting night. Thank you so much, Rayxor, for coming here and talking about this stuff with us. Obviously, it's
Hey,
probably
you bet.
very beneficial to have yours and then Scooby's kind of takes on this. It's going to continue to inform the conversation and the, determinations, I think, here. So thank you for being on. Thank you for showing us your little special little treat tonight. That was awesome. So thank you.
Sure. Thanks for having me on such short notice without really knowing what I was going to do. Well,
So I think we'll
you
go
knew a
out
little bit.
listening to Mr. Seabrook. Ding-ding-ding. This one here. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you guys as we go out listening to Stacy.
Wisconsin can be so cold. The scales of justice can erode. If we accept lies big and bold, or we forget we live on Avery Road. We live on Avery Road. Should be easy to see. This could be you, could be me. We shouldn't sit by idly, accepting everything that we are told. I live on Avery Road. I live on Avery Road. Avery Road.
So long, folks. As I said, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you guys.